Hello and welcome to another episode of the SMEFocus show, brought to you by FactoryNOW TV. I'm your host, Chris Greenough, and in this series we will focus on SMEs within the British manufacturing sector. Every week we will discuss and analyse the opportunities and challenges for industry in these unprecedented times. I've worked in the sector for over 26 years and I'm CCO at SDE Technology, one of the leading manufacturers of pressings and assemblies in the UK. As you can hopefully appreciate, this show is very much for manufacturers by manufacturers. My guest today is Denise Brinton, Director, Founder and Owner at Staysafe PPE. Hello, Denise, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you indeed. So please tell us about Staysafe PPE and what you do.
I founded Staysafe PPE back in 2016 as a vehicle for recycling PPE which had only been soiled and was still fit for purpose. But up until that point, no one else was doing it, so it was being thrown away.
So that's really on about cost saving for smaller business and larger business, but really taking something that would be waste up until that point, recycling, reusing and saving money.
Yes, exactly. We service large companies and small companies ranging from Ford Motors, Aston Martin, Nissan, who have weekly deliveries and collections, down to small SMEs that just ring us up when the bin's full and say, can you come and collect?
So how's your business? Obviously we've gone through COVID. The last 6 months have been tough and extremely challenging for most business. So how have you managed the business through this period?
The majority of our customers are automotive linked. So from the end of March onwards, our business dropped down to about 75% of its usual output.
And so are you back to now normal output, or you're still lower than you were before COVID started?
We're back to around 75% of output because most of the factories now have got their own equilibrium. They've done all the social distancing that they need to do, reduced the shifts and the number of staff, and are now performing as well as they can under the present circumstances. Obviously, in the Midlands, JLR's the big buyer, so if they sneeze, everyone else catches the cold from it. Absolutely.
And there's lots of calls for the government now to extend that furlough scheme. So I don't know whether you furloughed some of your staff from March to this point. So where do you stand on that furlough scheme being continued?
We actually have 4 staff furloughed. 2 of them are now back part-time furloughed. My view is extending the furlough scheme is not going to reduce the ultimate unemployment at the end of it. I think a lot of companies have rightly taken this period to reassess their whole output and decide amongst top management how many people they are going to need going forward. So I'm not sure that the furlough scheme extension is going to actually reduce the ultimate unemployment when you combine that with the drop in sales for the motor vehicle industry generally, and the amount of job losses that would have inevitably come with us leaving the EU.
So what more do you think the government can do to support SMEs, smaller businesses?
I don't really know that they can do a lot more. I think it's going to be a case of this period separating the chaff from the wheat, really, and the stronger companies will survive and move forward, and sadly there are going to be a few that are going to fall to the wall. I think the travel and leisure industry are going to be the hardest affected by all of this, because people are now going to be worried about their long-term unemployment, so are not going to spend as much money as they normally would have done had they been secure in their future business.
So how do you see the Staysafe PPE are going to weather the storm and get through this? Obviously, you're very, very strongly tied to manufacturing. Is there anything else you've been looking at as a business to either diversify, either cut back, or indeed either maybe grow, so investing?
We're actually growing and investing. We've invested in new premises. The majority of the PPE that's being recycled, that's in the news at the moment, is disposable PPE, which we can't do anything about anyway. But the shortage of disposable gloves has meant that a lot of manufacturers who were using disposables are now looking at reusable gloves. So we're finding that our inquiries and our sales are actually increasing. More and more companies are coming to us to wash gloves, including the glove manufacturers themselves. I know it's a bit like turkeys voting for Christmas, but it's giving them a leg up on long-term contracts if they can say, we can provide this glove for you, and we know a company who will wash it too. We're the only ones doing it in the country.
So that's fantastic news. I see lots of companies you're working with, your partners on the behind you there on the pop-up banners. So that's really that's something new for you, reusing PPE and working directly with the manufacturers. Had you done that before March?
No, but we're working closely with quite a few big names in the business, including Globus, Tilsatec, Mappa, Trafi. They're all keen to use us as an extra bow to string to their bow.
Which is fantastic news for you as a business. So where do you see yourselves now in the next 12 months, 2 years, 5 years? What's the growth plans for you and for Staysafe PPE?
Historically, we've doubled every 12 months. We've doubled our turnover every 12 months. We're now getting inquiries from overseas. I've had the British consulate in Spain on the phone this afternoon. Kerry Foods in Ireland. Ford Motors in Dagenham want us to roll out the system through the whole plant instead of the single production line we're doing at the moment. And they've also asked if we would be prepared to wash the PPE from Cologne head office if they trunk it over for us. So it's just going one way for us, really. I have to say, we can't. The 6 months that we've had off effectively at lower production, when I checked against the same time last year, the turnover figures were the same when you take into account the furlough payments that we've received. We would have hoped to have doubled that by now, but sadly that wasn't to be. But I think the next 6 months are going to make a real difference and a big impact on our turnover.
Well, as you say, I mean, you haven't doubled your turnover, but you haven't had a bad year compared with a lot. So a lot of manufacturers in March, April and May were at 10, 20, 30%. So at least you're maintaining what you did last year, and it's fantastic to hear a good news story. So what investment plans have you got over the next 12, 18 months?
We've been fortunate to be given a grant from the Marches Growth Hub, which is brilliant. That's enabled us to buy extra machinery, take on more staff. We've upgraded all our IT systems. Everything now is cloud-based, so we can actually access anything from anywhere in the world. We're talking of taking on a new salesman. Hopefully he'll be joining us next month. New dynamic CRM systems, so we can really take our infrastructure to the next level. And added to that, we're going for ISO 9000 and 14001 accreditation this year, which will set us apart from other laundry companies that may set up in the future. I'm not stupid enough to think that we're not going to get any competition. It's wonderful to be in that position now, but we need to safeguard our future.
Absolutely, and it's about constantly investing, constantly improving, and competition will come into your market, but you can stay ahead of it. You're first movers, and by constantly investing, constantly improving, you'll stay there. So as we come to the end of the year, it's been a tough year for most people within manufacturing, certainly within the Midlands. And then we come to the end of the year, we're leaving the EU. Do you think we're ready? I know it's a big question. Do you think we're ready? And do you think there's opportunities that will come out of leaving Europe?
I'm surprised and saddened that they're trying to renege on the agreement that was made last year. I think that's a bad move because it will show that we're untrustworthy in the general scheme of things. So I hope that that's resolved, although I do have some sympathy with the border issue with Northern Ireland. As far as being ready for it is concerned, I don't think we could possibly be ready for it because we haven't had enough time to prepare. Certainly, if the whole deal had been done some time earlier and we were able to have spent the last 2 or 3 years negotiating, then we'd have been more than ready. The markets that we're losing or potentially losing, I can't see that we'll be able to fill easily from the rest of the world. I think that the government needs to get its act together and actually get a workable relationship with the EU, because we rely on each other too much, and anything outside of the EU is going to increase carbon footprints, imported carbon footprints for transportation and so on. And that's exactly the sort of thing that I'm fighting against at the moment. We want to reduce carbon footprints by sourcing and reusing in this country and our nearest allies, instead of going to the Far East for it, or America. I mean, well, I think Trump's another issue altogether, but you know, we need to really safeguard what we've already got. My only hope is that the manufacturing companies will ignore their governments as far as they possibly can and protect their own interests and long-term future by continuing to reach some sort of workable agreement with our manufacturers.
Yeah, so it's really about working with our manufacturers in the UK. We've really got to take control and start reshoring. But as you say, there's a sort of a contrasting message there with carbon reduction. What you're trying to do is reduce the carbon impact on manufacturing in the UK, and then we're shipping stuff from around the world and bringing it in. Yeah,
absolutely. We're helping companies to move up the waste hierarchy by reusing. We tick all the KPI boxes for them in terms of continuous improvement, carbon reduction, waste management. But if we suddenly start having to send stuff thousands of miles that we were only sending 1,000 or hundreds of miles over into Europe, it's going to negate all of that good work.
Absolutely. And you're doing a lot of work within the Midlands, but I guess your supply now is around the UK, Britain wide?
The whole of England and Wales. We don't do much in Scotland. We don't do anything in Scotland at the moment, but we haven't had the demand for it. If that was the case, we would quite happily work with Scotland as well. We've got a couple of companies that we collect and deliver their goods by courier rather than doing it ourselves. But our biggest area is actually the Midlands and the North East around Sunderland, the Nissan plant and their tier 1 suppliers.
So do the OEMs sort of encourage their tier 1 suppliers to use you as well? So are they looking at that whole supply chain top to bottom?
No, there's no joined up structure with any of this. It's all very ad hoc. It's just recommendations, website inquiries, and me pursuing leads that I think would be useful to all of us, because we're saving people about 60% on their PPE spend when we start washing and processing their gloves for them. So it's just a question of getting over the initial reticence to wear gloves. The workforce have got to buy into it, but we use ozone in our wash process, which disinfects the gloves. They use it in the NHS widely, and actually we've got documented lab tests showing that there's no bacterial colonization on our gloves compared with new gloves, and that the performance level isn't impaired because we're able to wash at low temperatures with the use of the ozone in the wash system, and it's a far more efficient way than washing with domestic washing machines that don't reach the sustained temperature they need to realise complete disinfection.
So it's a real good news story. It's not just saving carbon, it's saving money. It's ticking all the boxes. That's why I can't understand why the OEMs wouldn't encourage their supplier base to take this up. But as you say, I mean, you're very tenacious. I know you're fantastic at selling and running the business, and the fact you're doubling the turnover every year is fantastic. Absolute great news. Denise, it's been absolutely great to talk to you.
You too. Thank you for the opportunity.
And good to see you, absolutely. So that brings us to the end of another SME Focus show. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to meeting more brilliant SME manufacturers like Denise next week. If you would like to get in touch with the show with a comment, a suggestion, or indeed to appear on a future episode, please email us tv@mtd.media. So from me, Chris G at SDE, goodbye.